given that we so far had mostly pew 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 and stuff blowing up.
Pew
Um,
pew pew is right.
all the day. Um, so it was very refreshing story-wise.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to No Drama, Just Movies, and we are back this week with another review. Please give our channel a lovely little subscribe. Hit that subscribe button to stay tuned with all the content we release each and every week in the world of movies and TV. My name is Cameron Megatronus Prime Kelly Smith, and I am joined by my esteemed colleague here.
My God, he's not a prime. Uh, I'm Phil, always the primate, never the prime. Cool.
Ooh, that's right. And if you've guessed it by now, we are here to review Transformers 1, the new installment in what has become a Transformers series that has lasted a gazillion years with a gazillion movies, barely any of them good. So the question I'm going to ask you is simply this: is this one more than meets the eye?
Better than the others. I would say absolutely. Yeah, it was really fun actually. And I think a lot of it is probably due to the animation, which I liked, and it allowed itself to be a little bit more goofy, I suppose, with that rather than like the Michael Bay films, which are pretty serious, I think, most of the time. Um, so yeah, and I enjoyed the story as well. I think it finally had a decent story that you can kind of relate to, of these two friends who just want to be, better in their life. What about you?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to echo some of those sentiments. I think the key word here is animation, and we will go into that. But the reason why I say the key word is animation is because I think similar to what you highlighted, after you've had, I don't even know of like in terms of being able to quote you a number of how many Transformers movies we've had, and they feel like even more than what we've had because the majority of those movies were bad. However, I think after all of those movies, all of those Michael Bay films, and obviously you had the Bumblebee movies as well,
Hmm.
I think when you now say, where do you go from here? I think that Paramount and Hasbro, I think, were probably at a position where, obviously they are going to move forward still with live action. But I think that if you ask where we go from here, I think that animation is a good option. And I think what you've highlighted there is that the taking this form in terms of going into animation allows you to have a different style of movie that I think you can play around with that maybe you don't get to fully utilize in live action. You mentioned Goofy, for example, but Goofy in a good way.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Obviously, you mentioned the animation. I'll be honest, when I first saw the trailer for this movie, I was not very impressed. The
Yeah.
trailer didn't excite me about the movie, and one of the things that didn't excite me was the animation.
Hmm.
I will still be very honest with you. I'm still not the biggest fan of the animation. I think that certain parts of it look good. Other parts, in terms of the actual look of the Transformers themselves, for me is still not that appealing. One of the things about the Michael Bay movies that I actually love is the look of the Transformers.
Yeah.
I think that they looked absolutely incredible. And going into this animated form, I just felt that the style of animation they used wasn't as appealing. These are Transformers, they look so cool, in theory. And I think that that wasn't utilized as much here. But you like the animation, you're a fan of it.
I did. Mainly like it was looked very shiny. It's not the kind of newer direction of animation which like uh films like the t recent Turtles film used, which looks a little bit more hand drawn, which I actually like really love. It was a bit like a step back to like just a normal like 2D animation, I suppose, where it's a bit more straightforward. Um, but I enjoyed it, and mostly I like animation because it's like it can do a little bit more, um, a, a little freer stuff with yeah, the movements of the characters, for example, which I
Yeah.
guess live action can't do because it has to be stay a little bit more serious. Like, for example, I mentioned with the Michael Bay films, but animation, I think this film was mainly aimed at kids. So yeah, you can have a bit more fun with it, I think.
Yeah, yeah, no, I do agree. And obviously, I haven't mentioned yet, but I do think this movie is great. It is fun. I think it's really enjoyable. Stellar cast, obviously,
Hmm.
stellar voice cast. I think, however, why is this movie great? At least for me. Well, my answer to that is simply put, I think it is the story. I
Yeah,
think that the story is fun. For the first time in God knows how many years, we had a movie, one on Cybertron, which I mean, at this point, you actually started to question if it actually even really existed. And two, it's a story about simply the Transformers. No humans needed, no humans
yes,
necessary, no humans bogging down or weighing down the story. This is simply a story about, as you highlighted, two friends, trying to make something of themselves and trying to prove that they are more, once again, than meets the eye. And, them going on that journey of self discovery, but also realizing, that what they had been brought up on was a lie. And, I thought what was really interesting about that movie is you're seeing how Optimus Prime, or what becomes Optimus Prime, I think it's Opax or Ryan Opax or something, him and
right.
D, yeah, how they eventually become the Megatron and Optimus Prime that we come to know, but also how they started off as friends and eventually formed that drift and feud that obviously then forms the Autobots and Decepticons. And I think that that was most fun. Also, Cybertron, I mentioned the animation. Even though I wasn't the biggest fan of the animation for the Transformers themselves, Cybertron looks really cool. And I could spend a lot of time there. And I really did enjoy the animated style for that. But as I said, this movie to me is great because of the story. And I think that they tell a great story that, especially as well, hadn't been utilized. If this maybe story had already been touched upon in live action and done really well, then maybe my thoughts would have been different. But it hasn't. And so, they told a really unique and cool story here. Great voice work as well. But did the story work for you?
Definitely, yeah. Like I said, it's very relatable of these two underdogs just trying to better their lives, and I guess by extension, the lives of all the other miners. Were kind of more second class or maybe even third class citizens. I love the idea, spoilers here, that this whole idea that they couldn't transform because they didn't have the whatever.
Transforming cogs.
The cog, yeah, shoot. The cogs was actually by design, that somebody took that ability away from them, which is also quite relatable for, like, if you're oppressed by the system.
Yeah.
So and are not given the means to advance. So I think it's now that I'm saying that, it's actually kind of very political,
Mm.
very like a societal story set in the Transformers universe, which I think is really new, given that we so far had mostly pew 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 and stuff blowing up.
Pew
Uh,
pew pew is right.
all the best. It was very refreshing story-wise. You did mention like the origin of Megatron and Optimus Prime. The only thing I didn't quite like, or one of the few things I didn't like, was that it was the origin of Megatron especially was very rushed.
Mm.
He like flipped like this. You could believe it that he's like feels betrayed by Sentinel Prime, who was his hero, and then suddenly he I don't know, decides to be a better Prime or something.
Mm.
Um, but I think it needed a little bit more drawn out, just a little bit more. What is the word I'm looking for?
Development?
Development. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's why there's two of us.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I just needed a bit longer stretch of development to get to that point. It actually reminded me a little bit of the Game of Thrones ending with Daenerys.
Mm.
You probably haven't seen it yet. All right.
I have. I mean, listen, I was there for Game of Thrones.
Um,
Don't underestimate me, boy.
but yeah, with the that one, the ending with Daenerys, that which made sense, but it was just very rushed.
Very quickly now, yeah.
Here as well. Uh, And another thing I didn't like probably at the end was I don't know how you felt about that. It veered a little bit into the childishness when, the whole thing of the speech and then I am Megatron. It's a little bit like for the kids. Uh,
Yeah.
the villain speech and like introducing himself, which was maybe a little bit much for me. I don't know how did you feel about that? Kind of like both of them going, I am Optimus Prime, I am Megatron now. Here's the stage set for the next one, basically.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that?
See, that's the interesting thing, right? Because you said that this movie you felt like is mainly targeted towards kids, but then we've also explored here, and you mentioned like very well that the fact that there are actually themes and things done in this movie that is a bit more targeted towards adults. Like, for example, we mentioned, or well, we mentioned when you were saying, or you mentioned, should I say? Well, I was going to say we, but you mentioned just then,
Right.
for example, exactly when Megatron, the quick, transition from him going from D to now Megatron. But the interesting thing with that is that there was some really powerful moments there where you can completely understand why he would go this route or why just taking them out of it, why someone would go this route and why someone would go that route. In this scenario, why if you have been lied to your whole life and you've realized that you've been manipulated and deceived by someone who you look to as your leader, something so personally done as someone taking something that's a natural ability from you and removing it from you without your permission and being lied to and deceived. I can completely understand why D in that case would go on that journey to becoming Megatron. However, yes, it does happen too quickly, and especially as we get to the end, to more towards the end, where it's a very quick shift from him being slowly on that descent to slowly now just to now quickly, excuse me, immediately going to Megatron. You mentioned, for example, some of the things being kiddish, and I was saying some of the things being targeted towards adults. One of those scenes, for example, is when they've captured him, D that is in the High Guard, and Sentinel, sees the sticker that he has of Megatron as Prime and says, well, I'm gonna now basically, I don't know, he uses some kind of drill or something to completely, seal onto him so that he never forgets. And that's the really like, powerful scene and quite
Mhm.
a, like
Yeah.
quite a whoa to see and and so moments like that now he's being tortured essentially, and so now you can see once again why he would go so left. However, it goes too much into what feels quite realistic and understandable to now I am Megatron, leader of the Decepticons. And I think the biggest thing for me, which I did not buy, and I said this to you after we saw the movie, is when he accidentally shoots Optimus. And I'm just going to say Optimus, I can't keep remembering to say Rhino Pax or whatever it is. But he shoots Optimus and, he's holding Optimus, stopping him from dropping, then lets him go. I don't believe
Mm,
that
yeah,
he
yeah.
would have did that, especially so soon. I don't believe that he would have been willing to let Optimus go, and that, just beforehand, his eyes turn completely red, or after that, and I don't know where that comes from, and if, suddenly there's another gear that turns or some crap, I don't even know. But, I didn't believe that. And I felt that, yeah, it was a bit too quick. And don't get me wrong, like, I think this is the thing about what's on paper in comparison to execution. Like, because even when him and the High Guard being banished, you can see that and go, okay, I understand once again how he's been slighted and would justifiably be pissed. And you can now see him experiencing all of this, now being banished to going, you know what, F you, I am going fully dialed up 100 Megatron. It's just the way that it's executed feels a bit too rushed. So I do agree with
Yeah,
that.
I think so too. The other thing I didn't quite enjoy as much was, sorry to say, B, or like Bumblebee, as most people probably know him as. I love Keegan-Michael Key. Like he's very funny. Like Key and Peele, stuff like that. But I think the issue with writing a character that's supposed to be annoying, is that sometimes you actually succeed and you make the character very annoying. And I think there was just a lot of B that just grated, on like got on my nerves a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
He had nice moments, like sweet moments, with his little artificial pals in wherever they are, like the trash room. Um, but yeah, some bits got very annoying quite quickly, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite sure at the moment how well this movie is doing. I don't know if it's
Mm.
it seemed like this is much more of a word of mouth movie rather than anything. And also just to jump on what you said, I actually did like B. I actually did like B. I thought that he was, he was all right. He was cool. However, in terms of where we go next, obviously, this movie is, set up in a way where you can easily have a sequel. The question is, do you want one?
Um, I think I'd love to see a little bit more of Cybertron, I think. Just because we've never seen it like until now, obviously. But just to see like, okay, they're Optimus Prime and Megatron now. What happens now, and how do they get to Earth? Like, what happens to Cybertron? How do they get to our planet? And maybe like end it there, like towards the end of the film, they arrive on Earth, or they're like on Earth, and now here we are. I don't think I want to see them on Earth actually, like a longer protracted scene or something. Um, but yeah, just seeing like how do these former friends now act with each other now that they're enemies? Like there's still a bit of love there between them, or do they just go into let's kill each other mode basically, or let's fight? Um,
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I'm really with you there, and I really do like that idea. I think that I think the thing that is good about the end of this movie is that there is a lot of story to tell. You have
hmm,
the story obviously between now the Autobots versus Decepticons, and eventually what will transpire, I guess, into the war for Cybertron. However, you also have the story of um the I can't remember the villains that the Sentinel was working with, but we haven't really fully explored them. Obviously, the guys that they were basically giving their supplies of whatever it's called to. I forgot what even that
yeah,
was called.
all that
But
stuff.
the important stuff. But you still have that to work out, who are they truly, what's their leader really like, you have that war. And then you actually have obviously with that, with the supplies slowly running out, once again the war for Cybertron as well. And you mentioned exploring more of Cybertron. Obviously, here we only visit, what is it, Iacon, which is just the city, right? So, if I'm not mistaken, clearly we're doing a great job with our Transformers lore. But there's still a lot. Yeah, there's still a lot to explore. There's, how does the rest of Cybertron look like? Are there different areas of Cybertron? Where, just like when they went to the surface, where has Megatron and Decepticons, where are they based now? There's a lot of story to tell, and it could be really fun. And as you said, this saga that they're telling, whether it be two movies or three, I think, yeah, should be rooted in the ultimately the war and eventual demise of Cybertron, told within, the story of, these two friends turn enemies. And then, yeah, if you want to then, as you said, end it by going to Earth, or depending on how well the movies do, if you then want to move to Earth, I guess you could, but we will see.
Okay, okay. A little question, because how clued up were you about Sentinel being the villain? Like, when did that strike you?
I did have an inkling towards the beginning when he first gave that speech about how he went to the surface but was
Hmm.
unsuccessful in finding the Matrix. I did have an inkling then. Only reason why is because the actor who was voicing him, it did sound a bit disingenuous. It did sound a bit something did sound a bit, this guy sounds a bit like a crook. But that was my first inkling, and then obviously, yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I was absolutely the same. I think it's John Hamm voicing Sentinel, because I think he played it very like a liar, like a
Yeah.
filthy liar. So yeah, you could kind of guess it right away, like that he either didn't bother actually looking, or that there was something he was trying to hide. Just
Yeah.
like how light he was explaining that he couldn't find anything. Um, so yeah, I don't know if that took away from the film a lot, because that was literally his first introduction, and we already knew, oh yeah, he's the bad guy. Um, but I don't know how other people would react, or children would react, if people would catch that, or if people minded that it was so obvious, if that added to the tension or something. I don't know. For
Yeah.
me, it was a bit like I didn't want to know that early.
Yeah, yeah, I see where you're coming from. It was a bit quite on the nose, wasn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's true. However, that's Sentinel Prime for you.
Let's
Prime.
go to the
So
smash shop.
oh yeah, that's right. Now, if you're unfamiliar with our channel here, we give our movies or TV reviews. Instead of a number out of 10, we give it slushies or an icy review out of 10. If you're a Penguin fan, you know what we're talking about. Good old Vic. So Transformers 1. How many slushies, or in this case for us, how many ices are we giving it out of 10? You first.
I'm gonna be nice because there was a lot of stuff that I actually enjoyed. It was kind of entertaining the whole way through. Um, so I'll give it an 8. I'll give it an 8 out of 10 ices. There were still some things that I didn't quite enjoy and that didn't work for me. Mainly the shift of the main baddie, basically.
Mm.
But also, like we said, the giving away the villain a little bit too early, and then B as well, grating a
Yeah.
bit. But yeah, overall, it was like a lot more entertaining than I thought it would be. So 8 out of 10 ices for me.
Wait, so you're going with 8 out of 10 ICs, and I'm going just one little decimal kind of up. I'm going with 8.5 ICs out of 10. I thought this was a fun watch. I think that if you were waiting for a Transformers movie that took place on Cybertron, that did not involve humans, and that had a little sprinkle of animation on top, this is for you. I think it's a fun movie. I think it's enjoyable, and I think you should go and see it, especially if you're a Transformers fan or you fancy something to watch this weekend. You definitely should go and see it. So I'm going with 8.5 ICs out of 10, and you're going with 8 ICs out of 10. So that will do it, ladies and gentlemen, for our review of Transformers 1. Once again, we are No Drama, Just Movies. If you liked our review here, please give our channel a lovely little subscribe. Please like, comment, share on our content here. We release weekly reviews in the world of movies and TV. We just did our episode 4 review of HBO's The Penguin, and we did a lovely little review of the greatest movie of all time. They call it Joker, Folie de, an Oscar contender. So please check out that review. The links for both will be in the comment section down below. Once again, my name is Cameron Megatronus Prime Kelly Smith, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague here.
Bill, always a primate, never the prime, Corwin.
Oh, that's right. We are primates in more ways than one. That's right. Once again, we are No Drama, Just Movies. We appreciate you coming and checking out our review here, and we will see you very, very soon. Take care, guys.
Bye.